Hi everybody. Some of you may already know me. I go by Alex or Lexi, but I am about to turn 30. I'm an Alsham's patient. I was diagnosed when I was about 10 years old, and I have been involved with Alsham Syndrome UK almost basically since it started in 1998. I live with my partner Adam, and we live in the south of England. I'm also a guide dog owner. My current guide dog is called Unique. Some of the UK families may remember my previous dog Lily. And I'm also a trustee on the board of ASUK. I've been doing this for about 12 years, and I'm currently vice chair at the moment. So this presentation is generally kind of geared around what I've currently been doing most of my life, but kind of ramped it up a little bit recently. So I was very lucky that when I was a child, my parents and my grandparents, who also helped raise me, were determined that I was to be given all of the same opportunities and learning experiences as any other child, regardless of my disabilities. I kind of followed the very standard Alsham pattern. I had heart failure when I was 6 weeks old, was blind by the time I was about 2, although I do have a little bit of remaining vision left, probably about 2%. I also have photophobia and nystagmus, and so very sort of typical Alshams. I have hearing aids, and I've got those when I was about 7, and I'm also diabetic. I have celiac disease, and probably some other things as well, but that's just me. So when I was a very young child, my parents and my grandparents, we lived on a farm. So I kind of grew up around horses, and we used to have this lovely gentleman that used to come and basically sit me on the front of his saddle and take me riding with him across the fields. Although I did other activities such as riding a bike, swimming, running about and bumping into things, horses really became something that I really connected with. And my parents and grandparents could really see that when I was around horses, that I was a bit different to what I was normally like. I became quite independent. And the horses actually seemed to have quite a respect for me in terms of when I was sort of near them, they'd stand still, or they wouldn't fidget quite so much. So kind of my riding journey really is that I started when I was about 5. In about 2010, my horse obsession really ramped up. I'd always ridden on and off, but not necessarily they were all I thought about. I had lots of other hobbies as well. But when I was about 16, the obsession started to get bigger and bigger. And then in 2017, I got my first loan horse, and this was a horse called Roscoe. And although he wasn't necessarily always right for me, and he is the horse whose bum you can see in the picture. So this is on the right hand side of the screen is a picture of me riding him out on a hack in the countryside, but I'm riding away from the camera so you can see my back and his white and chestnut bum and legs. He was the first guy that really anybody actually gave me a chance to see what I could do with horses. Though I'd always ridden, everybody always told me, no, you can't bring them in from the field, you can't groom them, you won't be able to see what you're doing. And thankfully he was owned by a friend of mine, and she was very much, you can do what you can do. So I will always be very thankful to her for letting me do that. And over my time with him, I realized that I wanted to start competing. Unfortunately, he wasn't quite the right vehicle for this. He was very lazy. And so we started to think about other ways to get me into competing. And in the UK, we have an association called the Riding for the Disabled Association, and I had heard of them before, but didn't really think it was an avenue that I would go down, because I didn't see myself as a disabled rider. But after trying to enter a few able-bodied competitions, I found that they weren't really accessible or kind of safe for me. So in 2019, I joined the Riding for the Disabled, and we had a few false starts, and lots of people, even though they were in that situation, still, it wasn't the right place for me. I was too able-bodied for their disabled riding, which sounds like a very big cliche. But thankfully, in 2019, sort of later on in the year, I managed to find a riding stables who actually let me begin to compete, and who were more adult focused rather than child focused. So in 2020, I entered my first dressage competition, and in September of 2021, so this year, I actually competed in my first national competition. So this slide is about the lovely COVID. So as some of you might know, I contracted COVID at the end of 2020 last year. Sorry, at the end of December in 2020 last year. I ended up extremely poorly and ended up in the ITU for 3 weeks on a ventilator. I obviously don't remember a lot of it, because obviously I was unconscious, but I spent all in all about a month in hospital. And when I came home, I didn't really realise how much damage COVID had done until I started to try to do things again. I'd had some physical therapy in the hospital where they had to retrain me to walk again, because obviously I'd had a lot of muscle wastage from when I was unconscious. COVID had caused a lot of damage to my lungs, but it also put me back into heart failure. So this was a massive challenge, and a challenge that I didn't actually believe was the case. All the doctors were telling me, oh yes, you have heart failure. I was like, no, I had that before, done with that, not anymore. But it wasn't until I spoke to the consultants in Birmingham and went for my annual clinic, thankfully in April 2021, that I finally believed that I was back in heart failure. And this was a massive shock. I think because I'd been so well before, I just couldn't quite believe it. So it's taking a long time to get back to where I am, but we are getting there. The picture on this slide is again of me with another horse that I used to ride. Oh no, sorry, it's not. It's just a generic picture of nursing staff. So this slide is all about how you ride as a blind individual. So I tend to ride in a 20 meters by 40 meters arena. Obviously I ride with a coach, and the relationship that you have with your coach is quite important as a blind rider. Most dressage riders and horse people will talk about having a relationship with your horse, and you have to be one with your horse. But actually for a blind rider, it's more like a three-way relationship between horse, rider, and coach. You rely heavily on your rider on your coach for direction and for the visual input that you can't necessarily see. When I ride around an arena, I count my horse's strides. So a standard arena has markers around the sides in the forms of letters, so I will count my strides between these markers. However, I can't see these markers, so another important job that my coach does is that she calls the markers to me. So as my horse's nose reaches level with the marker, she will then count the marker, so that I then have an audible sound to be able to count my horse's strides between. The other main way that a blind person will ride is by feel, and I love to ride bareback, so without a saddle, because this gives me a real connection between the horse's back and myself. Obviously, cantering around an arena with no saddle can be slightly tricky, so I do use a saddle most of the time, but it's really about feeling your horse's, legs, where they are, where your saddle is. But the main way that we ride is practice, practice, and practice. And we fail a lot, most of the time, usually at the moment, because I can't breathe. But you just have to practice and practice and practice, and you do form a muscle memory. I think as a blind person, we map and memorize pretty much everything. So we have a lot of sort of muscle memory. So I'm hoping that this video of me riding my horse at the moment, Dunstan, hopefully it should have sound, so it should just be a bit of a demonstration to you of how I ride.
M, B, F, A.
Is the sound working, Catherine?
K.
Yes, it's perfect.
E, H.
So for those of you who can't see, I'm on a dapple grey horse,
M,
riding around an arena
circle now.
that has sand on the floor and kind of trees around the outside. And the lady's voice you can hear is my coach shouting the letters out to me.
B, good circle.
Oops. So that was just a little sort of demonstration of how I arrive, kind of the live action, because sometimes it can be a little bit challenging to kind of understand how it all comes together. So this slide is my achievements. So I've been incredibly lucky this year to actually be able to compete, albeit virtually. So I actually entered my first dressage competition at the end of 2020 virtually, and I won this class. I then progressed on in the early part of 2021, I believe sort of June, after I'd had COVID, to win a regional, I apologise, my alarm's just gone off. I competed in a regional competition of which I came first. I then went on to compete in another virtual dressage test of where I came second. And then recently in September, October time, I have also competed in my national competition throughout the whole of the UK, and I came third overall. So I feel incredibly lucky to have been able to compete, albeit virtually, but in these times where many people haven't been able to continue the sport that they have loved and enjoyed. So I think my main point that I want to get across to you, I know we have a lot of new families on board, but a lot of old ones too. If I can do it, anybody can do it. Your children and your Austrian patients and adults are incredible human beings. We overcome challenges every single day. People like to put so many barriers in our way in terms of them saying, no, you can't do it, when actually, yes, we can. There are so many people that told me I would never be able to have my own horse, be able to ride, be able to compete, because I cannot see, I can't understand where I'm going, the horse is going to stand on me, which, isn't the case. Yes, I've fallen off, yes, I've been stood on, but I can do it just as well as anybody else. I don't need to be able to see to be able to achieve my dreams. It's been one of the things I've wanted to do for a very long time. And the fact that I've been able to do it whilst I have had COVID and had heart failure is incredible. And I have to pinch myself a lot of the time, because I am quite lucky to even be here today because of COVID. But I think, you know, it's made me even more determined to achieve everything that I want to in life. And your Austrian people, you know, your children, they can all do it. They just have to find what they're passionate for, and, you know, strive towards that. And the only thing I can say to you is, you know, very much like Jennifer and Marina said, you are the advocates for them when they can't be. You have to stand in their corner and fight with them, because they will always fight and they will always achieve exactly what they want to. And this condition will not beat them. They have to do things differently, but there isn't anything that we cannot do as an Austrians person. We just have to do it a little bit differently. So thank you very much for listening to my presentation. I apologise if I haven't described all of the pictures. I apologise, that is now my house phone going off. But my contact information is all on the screen. So please feel free to contact me in any way.
Thank you, Lexi. Hopefully you're coming back to us.
Yeah, I'm here, sorry.
Okay, no worries. Thank you very much. Lots of the messages are in the chat box, Lex, that just say congratulations, fabulous, great inspiration. Gives people kind of some real boost to what people can achieve. Now we've a question in here, Lex. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
I'm not off.
Yeah, got all your IT working? All your phones going off?
No. It won't be quiet. I don't know how to turn it off. There we go, we turned it off. Sorry,
Okay.
I did twice.
No worries. So lots of congrats, and
Yeah,
inspirational some of the things that you do are.
yeah,
I've had a question about COVID.
yeah.
Need to talk about this, which just says, can you elaborate a little more about COVID, and had you had the vaccine when you contracted COVID, and are you advised as a person with Ulstrom to reduce socializing and other activities more than other people?
Sure. So I hadn't had my vaccine when I contracted COVID. It hadn't gotten to the point where they were rolling it out to the clinically vulnerable. So I hadn't had my vaccine. I have now had both of my vaccines and my booster jab. So if anybody hasn't had their vaccine, then please vaccinate yourselves. This virus is horrendous. I can't tell you how awful I felt, the fact that it nearly killed me. And I consider myself to be a fairly well individual before I contracted COVID. So if you haven't vaccinated yourselves or your children, you know, please do. If you have worries or concerns about that, then please speak to your professionals about it. But it was absolutely horrendous. I'd isolated basically in my house for a year. And unfortunately, my partner is a paramedic, and I also have a personal assistant who helps me. And unfortunately, we will never know where it came from. But, you know, it happened, and unfortunately it did. But yes, if you haven't been vaccinated, please be vaccinated. Please try not to catch it because it's horrendous. But on the other end of the spectrum, I know that it's getting, you know, we have a new variant now. We have to begin to live our lives again. So it's about taking a calculated risk, you know, wearing a face covering, washing hands. You know, if you can meet outside, then great. If not, wear a face covering or a mask. You know, but we have to start to live our lives again. We have to start going out, and, you know, we can't live inside forever. So it's difficult, and it definitely has knocked my confidence. I will not go out by myself now without a sighted individual, because I can maybe potentially feel if I am around other people, but I can't control what other people are doing. So I now rely on a sighted person to try to keep me as safe as possible. I hope in time I will be able to go back out by myself and feel that confidence. But yeah, it's really not great. Really try not to catch it, you know, and you just have to keep going, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you for that. It's quite a, you know, kind of insight into your quite personal journey.
Yeah, thank you.
Clearly, we're all worried and concerned for a very long time. You're going out now riding on your own, aren't you?
Not really, no. So my partner or my PA take me to the stables, and then they're with me until I get on the horse in the arena, and then they come and collect me again from the arena. So no, not really. I ride independently, as you saw in the footage. And it's quite easy to be socially distanced when you're on a horse, because the horse is actually 2 meters. So that's quite easy, but we're getting there, you know, it's a
Good.
slow process.
Okay, so one other question, and again, lots of very positive messages saying bravo, Alex, great achievements and brilliant presentation, and thank you. Just one other question, which was around education.
Yeah.
And kind of you considering what were some of the biggest challenges, or perhaps just thinking about time, perhaps you could just identify one challenge within your education that you'd like to give a piece of advice on.
So I have experienced both mainstream school and specialist school. I think it wasn't so much a challenge, but I think the best piece of advice I could give is always listen to your child, what your child needs, and what they want. Be guided by them. I hated special school. I found it wasn't challenging or academic enough for me. And I was very grateful that my parents listened to me and were, again, my advocates when I wasn't able to be my own advocate because I was a child and adults didn't listen to me. There is no right or wrong answer when it comes to education. It's individual, it's personal, it's what's right for your child. But if you keep them at the centre, you keep listening to them and keep that conversation open, I think that's the best way to move forward in the education system.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you very much, Lex.
Thank you.